There was a time when jazz was normal music. When it wasn't music you had to go out of your way to hear. It was on the radio. You went to dances, and that's what the band was playing. If you went to a dance where there was a band, it was on the jukeboxes. I came up in a time with jukeboxes where you put a nickel into the machine and it played your record, and jazz was that, and blues as well. And on a certain philosophical level, jazz is perfectly American music because, first of all, it's the most democratic of all serious musical forms. There's no hierarchy of composer to conductor to instrumentalists. They're all working together, making the music together in collective improvisation. Which you think about improvising is a hard discipline, and improvising with some other people at the same time is a very hard discipline, but jazz solved that. Jazz changed the way that people play their instruments in many ways. Louis Armstrong added an octave to the trumpet, doing something that no trumpet teacher of the time would have permitted him to do, but he didn't have a trumpet teacher, so he just went ahead and did it. The jazz trombonist, J.J. Johnston, has a strong staccato style, changed the technique of the trombone, and now you find in the conservatories, people are teaching that. The saxophone got made into a popular instrument because of jazz. It was made largely for marching bands, and Adolph Sax, who made it in the 1840s or something, never foresaw it being put to the uses that jazz musicians put it to. Modern American culture was largely made by jazz. As I talked about all the popular music, all the dances that came along in American culture were jazz dances. If you go to the movies and you look at some of the movies of the 40s and 50s and you see all the tap dancing going on, that was jazz dance. The fact that jazz gives the highest expression to the individual within the context of the group is a very American thing. And as I say, the fact that it is improvisation is a very American thing, because America is a country that's had to make its culture very, very fast, make its society very fast, and is constantly remaking it. Jazz has somewhat suffered, in a way, from the fact that it has become respectable, in the sense that now that it is taught in universities and conservatories, it has become more middle class. I think that hip-hop and jazz are very much related in that way. Hip-hop emphasizes, again, improvisation. And we're not talking about commercial, misogynistic, awful hip-hop. We're talking about hip-hop that serious people are trying to preserve and make into serious cultural expression. Hip-hop is the music that young people made when we took the instruments from them. Hip-hop is the jazz they made. I think if they had the instruments, as my generation had the instruments, then they might have made jazz or something like it. But since they didn't have the instruments, they made music out of what they had. And so there it is. Jazz has introduced a lot of slang to American culture. So it's affected the way people talk. We use the word cool or hip or smooth or all of those were jazz words going back to the 40s. And a lot more of them, many of which are not in use today. But I noticed a lot of them are cycling back. It used to be urban working class music. And there's that ghetto genius that goes with that, that went into hip hop, which used to go into jazz. So now if you listen to a lot of contemporary jazz musicians, now let me say it, I don't want to denigrate this generation of jazz musicians, because there are more very good jazz musicians playing today than there ever were. But one thing that they lack is the kind of individuality that came when people had to make the thing up for themselves. When you didn't have, studies and theory for yourself. When you didn't have great technicians teaching you all the techniques of the instrument. When you didn't study, when you didn't academically study the great masters of the music, but you sort of worked it out yourself. You'd buy their records and go home and play along with the records, and then try to figure out how to do it yourself. Maybe you were working out your fingering. Some older guy would help you out with it, if you knew a jazz musician. And it used to be common to know jazz musicians. They lived in the community and people knew them when they grew up. And they would help you out with it. But basically, you were required to teach yourself this music and to find some friends you could work with who were also trying to teach themselves the music. And so you got real individual styles. You could hear 5 notes of Coleman Hawkins and know that's him. Hear 5 notes of Lester Young playing the same instrument, playing the same song, and know that's Lester Young. 5 notes of Charlie Parker, not even 5, 3 notes maybe. And that's Bird, Hear John Coltrane, one note, just his tone is so distinct. That's John Coltrane. But nowadays, you can't really quite do that. You can do it with some of them if you've heard a lot of them, and you hear a lot of them. You hear a tune. By the end of the tune, you might be able to say, "Yeah, that was so and so." But it's not a common thing. There came a sort of a bifurcation in the music because with the movement called bebop, with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis, all those people, the music got to be like a concert music. It got to be like a chamber music, and it was no longer dance music. So it separated from the mass of people. It became a music that people who were interested in sitting still and listening went to. And of course, that meant it would have a smaller audience. But I lived through that, so there never was a time when I was removed from jazz.